Okay, so it looks like we are live. It's 10 a.m. Thank you all for coming, for joining online. Is this working okay, Tony? All right, cool. And thank you to Tony for setting this live stream up so that members who don't want to risk bad weather can still join, or they might be out of the state. So hello, faraway Bodgers. We're here today to talk about the potential for expansion, pros and cons, and then also this has brought up a lot of conversation about what should we do with the space. That is, we think, probably a long conversation, and so we're going to put that to the end. So we're going to start out with should we expand, and kind of go over some numbers, and see if you think that's a good idea. The space in question, did you get that, Tony? Cool. So for those of you online, I think Tony's going to pop this up. But this, for those of us, and I love, Scott mentioned we should have a "you are here," right here. So this is our current space, right here. We are in the clean room, social room, craft, etc. And then this is the big shop, and that's the wood shop in the classroom, right? Okay, so this is the space in question. It's right next to us. It's through that wall. It's roughly 8,000 square feet. There are currently no doorways through, but the landlord will put some in. It's got a glass door in the front. It's got a people door in the back. There is no overhead door yet, but the landlord has expressed interest or willingness to put one in. So there's that. It has 2 bathrooms that are mirror image of ours. So the nice aspect of that is if we do expand, I mean, God forbid, we keep growing and get to 500 members, the city starts to worry about whether or not occupancy rates work out for us. This would be a great location versus the other side that doesn't have any bathrooms, because the bathrooms are already in. So with 4 sets of bathrooms, we're going to be in a great, with 4 sets of bathrooms, we're going to be in a really good position to grow. So, all right, so again, so this is the space next door. I've tried to overlay it. You see this blue line? If this space were in our space, it would be all of the clean room across to the shop. So all of the clean room across to this. That's how much space we would be adding. The space next to it is 10,000 square feet. And the nice thing about it is it even has an overhead door and 2 people doors to go through if there's ever need for expansion and it's open. Yeah.
Do we have anybody monitoring Slack and anybody monitoring YouTube? You're monitoring YouTube? Who's got Slack? You got both? Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
That's Tony, in case anybody listening didn't catch that.
And maybe let's come on in. Have a seat. Oh, that's right. There's a framing class going on right now. Sorry. Yep. So go through the yellow door. Yeah. So all right. So there you go. So 8,000 square feet. Has the advantage of bathrooms. It's got a glass door. They'll put doors in here. It is really empty. I don't know if any of you got a chance to look at the image of it, but it's not really painted like this, but it's basically, actually it's more like the shop. It's like the shop side. Imagine 8,000 square feet of the shop.
I mean, it's kind of like this wall back. I know you people on stream can't see this, but it's like this wall back here.
Yeah, and the ceiling goes all the way up. We will afterwards go and look at the space. If you want to, at any time you like, you can walk out our back door, walk down there, walk out our back door, walk down there, and walk in the people door.
We got any more leverage?
It's open and unlocked.
Okay. Cassie Fabian was just messaging me and said she can't hear you that well.
Okay. So that sounds good. So I was hoping we would have some kind of details from the landlord by now. I should have known better. But the figure that we were quoted was between $6 and $6.50 a square foot per year. So you multiply that times 8,000 square feet, divide by 12 for a monthly. That gets you about, if it's $6 per square foot per year, that would be $4,000 for rent. There would be CAM or triple net or maintenance that they put on top of that. We don't know what that is yet because we haven't paid it yet for here. So fingers crossed. We've been here 6 months. If you're wondering why not, we've been here 6 months, and what the landlord, since this is a brand new thing for them, they like to see what the costs look like and then come up with an estimate. So there you go. So they're looking back over the last 6 months to give us what it'll be, and then they project that forward, saying it's probably going to be the same thing, or maybe a little more, or whatever for 2020. But we should have a better idea of that soon. So yeah, $4,000 per month in rent. It will have CAM alongside it. There is electricity. There are overhead lights. There are not outlets along the walls. There are panels, like when we moved in here. So we would need to run circuits. And I don't know if you all saw on the conversation, part of what I think is important to mention in this, once we get to the what should we do with the space conversation, is we want to minimize the cost as we go forward. That means we want to make sure we have enough revenue, things that we can rent, as well as that the electrical build out would not be the same as what we put in here. Eventually, probably, perhaps. But this was about $39,000
Yeah,
And
in just electrical.
in just electrical.
Yeah.
And that was to start from the panels in this space. So start from the panels in this whole space and put all the electric circuitry that we use. So $39,000. We don't want near that. And so we're trying to go in slowly, sort of in phases. So Sean, as treasurer, do you want to do talk about your projections?
I mean, even in, well, I don't know if you want to give the good news about the threshold.
We just hit our a landmark. We had just last night. We got to 300 members. So yeah, it's exciting. It's also I always like to say though, it's there's a downside to it, and that is that we have the same infrastructure that we had when we were 50 members. We are run by volunteers. We have, a board and area captains, and for the most part, that's it. And so as we get bigger, our services to our members can suffer. And so my apologies to everyone for any time that has suffered, and that's something we definitely need to pay attention to moving forward. But yeah, 300 members. So it's not all $50 a month. There's many of our members are at discounts.
Yeah.
30%?
Yeah, that's what
30% of that would be at half price. And so there's that. We have added studios successfully here, I would say. Without, studios was something we sort of thought about in the old space, didn't have room for. We definitely wanted to put them in here. They've been very popular without advertising them at all, without really even mentioning them to anybody. They filled up. And so that tells me that it's something that people want and will seek out and find because they had to get here. The other thing, I was talking with someone, one of our co-founders, JT Smith, is a serial entrepreneur, and he was here last night walking around, and he said, and I apologize. He said, your studio rates are really low. That's why they're so popular. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but we want it to be like that's part of our thing. And so one of the things he mentioned too was the option of perhaps will we have a different kind of studio. Maybe it's a tiered studio. Maybe you rent a larger studio or something with more. We try to appeal to businesses for those. So I think that even within our revenue model that we currently have, there are ways that we can sort of grow that and expand it. So 300 members and questions?
I know when I signed up, I went through a little questionnaire, what I wanted to do, what my interests were. Do we break down that membership by, how many guys really want to do woodworking, how many really want to do metalworking or stained glass?
That would be a great idea. We should definitely do that. I would say we don't do it yet.
Okay.
When everybody asks a question, can you give me your name so I know who you are to okay, so I can make sure I know who.
Well, so there are a lot of different ways to paint this picture. Guessing about how many total members we'll get in the next year. At what level have we reached market saturation? There will be a plateau. I mean, there's a limited number of people in Madison But Milwaukee Makerspace, I just plugged in their numbers. They sort of hover around 350 is what I've been told. And I even plugged in a model where we lose a bunch of members. It's hard to paint a picture where we can't do this. The question, depending on how, like in a potential downturn, or if we just kind of do okay, the real struggle is going to be using our cash flow to satisfy some of these things that these struggles that we're gonna have when we're a larger space. We might want to start thinking about getting help, like someone to pick up a lot of the just the maintenance and book work and just day-to-day activities here. Like that seems very reasonable to me. We want to. There's a discussion about saving money for the new space in 10 years or 7 years or whenever we do that. And the numbers tossed around there seem pretty high to me, pretty aggressive. But okay, so if the question is, can we do this? Yes. Can we do it comfortably? That depends on demand and things that I can only guess at. Is that?
If you all have any questions, so Sean's the one that knows our finances best. So do you have any questions on the finance side of it?
How much do we have coming in?
So net cash flow in right now about a little over $5,000, and that's growing. And so we have 20 pending members. So we expect that most of those will join in the next month or so.
That's after expenses.
So net cash flow. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Net cash flow.
Excess over expenses.
Yep. So
Paying our
yeah,
rent, our utilities, all
expenses approaching 10,000 and incomes approaching 16.
The only thing that doesn't include is the camp.
that. Exactly.
No. So this estimate actually has a per month CAM based on what they cited, but we haven't paid it yet. Is the
Yeah, and so
So how much, so we have money in reserves that if we did do this, you have the money right now to do the build out?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
If we keep it cheap enough, and 20 grand is cheap for
Well,
this.
so that's we should explore that because we have that number. The cash available right now is 18,000, and we'll be accumulating that in the months preceding the move, and we know that'll be a little while based on their previous behavior. So we'll have some time to save up money for more build out, of course.
if I could, so Scott and then someone online.
Oh, sorry, that was for you.
If you want people online to be able to follow the conversation, I suggest that the person answering the question repeat the question.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
It's hard
Excellent.
to do it because it just seems like
Yeah.
everybody heard it, but probably they didn't.
so the
Sure.
request was that we repeat questions from the audience to the microphone.
So Sean, if you could type net on the table, since it's overriding anybody's ability to hear.
If I could do what?
Not
Not
type on the table.
I think your
Because the
laptop.
microphone,
Sure.
you type it.
I don't think I was taking.
People with those loud keyboards.
Yes. So was there a question online?
Yeah, so Casey online asks, what is the free cash flow month over month and how has it been growing on terms of percentage gain?
Nice, Casey.
And then he said, I'm good, so.
Yeah, cash. So I on this particular screen I don't have the historical, but let's see, just offhand. 400. That's like 8% a month. Is that true? Wait a second. Wait, 8.
So while Sean digs into that, is there another question we can take right away?
Yeah, 6% a month.
Yeah.
Is that true? That seems crazy to me. But we've been gaining. Well, we gained like 40 people last month, so
Yes.
I guess that makes sense to me.
6%. So Sarah.
So I saw someone on Slack asking about grants. Is that something that
about?
So the question was, are we looking at proposing for grants that would help with build out? It has certainly been brought up. There are a couple of people who, there we go, thank you, who is at least Ron has volunteered to help out with that, and I would guess that we might have a couple others. That would be great. I mean, we have to sell it. Oftentimes grantors don't necessarily, you don't say like, hey, we're doing great stuff. Can we do more of it? Can you give us money to do that? They're going to say, why would we do that? So we need to kind of sell the fact that this would be new, or it would be better, or whatever that looks like. I do think there are some possibilities. And so if you're in the Slack channel for fundraising, if you're interested in that, please go to that Slack channel, fundraising, and that's where we can discuss those sort of things. But it is being looked at. And other
The
questions?
specific grant is 25,000.
Ron says the
For
specific,
expanding community.
the specific grant is 25,000. It's for expanding the community.
A community,
A community.
and this would be considered a community.
Okay, expanding a community, and this would be considered a community. And I would say too that when we had a meeting here when the city planner who's in charge of the Oscar Mayer plan came and talked to us, and one of the key questions I wanted to ask him was, so do you think we fit with the plan as it's progressing so far? And he was very positive. He said, oh yeah, this is great. This is what we're looking for. So, Tony.
So we have another question online. This one's from Cassie. We have some significant water leakage issues in our current space. Do we have any idea about if that kind of issue is more or less present next door?
Okay, so, and everybody heard that question? Do I need to repeat it? Okay, good. So water questions. The space, let's just say the rougher space that's towards the Capitol, Suite D is what they call it, definitely, the landlord says it's fixed. I remain skeptical. We'll see. And they said, oh, that's totally fixed. So I think that would be a concern about the Suite D. Suite B, which is upstream from us, so to speak. Bad analogy, but towards Oscar Mayer. I haven't seen any evidence of water leak there. It was part of the fixes they did on our current space. They did a bunch of fixes on our current space. After the last of them, it feels like they did resolve it. There's an issue of a downspout by the overhead door, but so I am more hopeful. One of the advantages of the space we're talking about is it is the nicer space. It is much better and doesn't have the kind of water issues. Go ahead.
Basic question for me is 8,000 square feet enough?
So the question is, Dwight's question is 8,000 enough? Funny, JT, again, so he's an entrepreneur. So we all come at this from different backgrounds, right? We have different experiences and different tolerances for risk. JT's a serial entrepreneur. He has a high tolerance for risk. And he said that same thing. He said, well, why don't you get both, the 8 and the 10? And I said, because that's a lot of money. And he said, yeah, but it's open now and it's a good price. And so that's his take. I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I'm just saying that is, he said, are you going to keep growing? Like, well, yeah, but 8,000 ought to be enough. And he said, yeah, well, you thought that about 14,000. So again, I'm not saying we should do that, but you're not the only person to suggest that.
We do have, strategically, if that comes to pass, we get 400 members, 500. We can talk crazy if we want, but we still have until they move in another person, we still have, a year from now, we can maybe move into the one adjacent to our new boundaries.
Could we, if we move, if we might want to ask for a right of first refusal.
Okay, so the response was, if we don't take it, we should ask for a right of first refusal on the Suite A. Oh, nice. Okay, so ditto that. Yeah, that's a great idea. We can certainly negotiate that. Done.
Just for reference, the Milwaukee makerspace is 16,000.
So Doug says, for reference, Milwaukee Makerspace is 16,000 square feet with their 350 members. Yeah, and that adding 8,000 to our 14,000, 22,000. It's a little mind-boggling for me personally. I don't mean to be weird, but I can't even imagine. So that feels like a tremendous amount, but so did this space. The other thing is though, okay, so as Sean was saying, you know, if we put studios in it, let's say we do it, your calculations were at 10 studios?
Yeah, I just put in a modest, I put in 6 here in the one that we can afford.
Okay, so 6 studios.
Yeah.
There's certainly room for 6. But let's say we put in 20 studios, like I don't even know. But then the question is, at a certain point, we will reach a saturation. And, if we're, what would that be? 32,000 square feet, if we're the whole thing, maybe there's just not that much interest in studios. There might be interest in other things, but we do have to look at, we're being really successful in our trends right now, but at a certain point, you just can't go further. Tony?
So a bunch of questions come in. One from Brian King. Could we buy our building from the landlord?
We asked them that, and they were skeptical. Let me just summarize it by saying that we could afford it. They have long-term plans for this space. If any of you have seen the plan, the city's plan for what this looks like, there's development all over here. So this building is in kind of a prime location because you can come right off of Packerson's commercial. There's going to be development in front of us, but we'll be the next ring, so to speak. And so they probably would be doing a 2 to 3 story here. So we have to make it worth their while if we buy it. So that's where, sure, if we had all the money in the world, yeah, let's do the development ourselves. But if not, then that would be hard for us.
Next question is from Thomas. Do we have a layout available of the Milwaukee space?
We might be able to get one, but no.
You can go to their website if they have a architectural layout on their website.
Oh, good. Doug says if you go to their website, they have an architectural layout of it to see what they do with it. I will say, just anecdotally, I noticed that they have a lot of, their metal area is much bigger and their wood shop is much smaller.
One more question online, just to clear them up, from James. So we're 6 months into our current lease, and it'll be months before we occupy B. Will they roll the new space into the current lease term, or will we end up with 2 staggered leases?
They were going to do an addendum, as far as the management of the leases. So it's our current lease with all the same conditions, except for they will add space onto it at such and such cost, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get the staggered term answer, but I can certainly ask.
So,
You're good, John.
We have a 7-year lease on this space.
Question, we have a 7-year lease on the space? Yes, we do.
So your discussion about proposed development in this area, is there potential we could be booted out of here in 7 years, or do we have an option for another 7 years?
We have, so the question is, could we get booted out of here in 7 years? Yes. We have sort of the right of refusal to renew. So if a lease is offered, we'll get first dibs on it.
But there's no guarantee of that.
No guarantee. In fact, there's even no guarantee that that we will be in this exact space for 7 years. That was one of the difficult aspects of this particular lease is the landlords don't necessarily know everything that they're going to do. I don't get the feeling they really have a master plan. I mean, they have ideas, and I'm sure they would say they do. But things have changed enough that I get the feeling that I don't know what they're going to be feeling like in 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, that to me adds a whole different perspective to what we're considering here. With expansion up to 400, 500 members, and then suddenly be without a home, possibly.
So our lease does say that they have to move us into something comparable. We're not just left out in the dry that way. And also, 6 years is a long time. A lot of economic things can change in that time. It's quite possible nothing will happen.
Yeah.
Well, it's most likely nothing will happen. But,
yes,
having been through this a few times where, the price is too high, it's never going to happen. 2 weeks later, it's gone and you're out.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Emphasizing the importance of saving up to move or whatever.
Ron and then Fiona?
So there is a kick-out clause in the lease, in the current lease, right? Meaning they can kick us out at their option. That is correct.
I mean, eviction.
So the question is, do we have a kick-out clause? Can they kick us out?
They
I
can
think
kick
for
us out.
cause, not just because
No, I
for
mean,
whims.
if the development plans evolve, they can kick us out, but they have to find us a space.
Exactly,
Right.
yes.
In that process, do they compensate for the build-out that we've spent?
I don't think that is part of the lease. So the question was, in the kick-out clause, if they want to develop this and they want to kick us out, in the lease it specifies they need to move us, find and move us to a comparable space. I do not believe there was anything about the amount that we've already spent.
Well,
to
I
build
think
this.
comparable means the electrical is all
Well,
kind of the
that's
same.
The
you
question
know.
is, what's their definition of comparable?
Yeah,
Does-
so we can give you the lease, because
Does it reference location
does it reference location?
of a comparable space?
It would be in Oscar Mayer, and at the time, we had conversations that, well, we hope that comparable doesn't mean buried in some, like bunker over there in Oscar Mayer. And they're like, oh, no, that's not what they mean. So, but I don't want to spend a lot of time renegotiating our current lease. Let's think forward. Fiona?
So do we know if the Milwaukee makerspace or other makerspaces have employees that they have working in the space?
They do not. They do not. So the question is, does Milwaukee Makerspace have an employee? And every makerspace, if you look across the country or hackerspace, they have different models. Like even here in town, Sector has Chris that, it's all him. So he's in a sense, or he is an employee. So everybody does it a little differently. The one thing we have done is trade a member to do some cleaning here. Because with the big space, and I have to say, I think that's working out really well. But so it is definitely, I think, in our future.
Yeah, because mostly I board burnout, or I don't know where you guys are all in that, and making sure that you're not, you guys have taken on a lot of responsibility. So what can we do to alleviate that and make sure that, I know team captains are, managing spaces, and at some point we reach so many members, like you guys don't get a chance to do what you need to do. So
Yeah, I mean so the comment was thinking about board burnout and area captain burnout. That should be considered seriously. I couldn't agree more. We definitely will need to have a conversation like this in the future about how do we tweak our model or shift our model such that services for the members are maintained without burning people out.
Got a couple more statement online from Aaron. Keep in mind also that landowners cannot just do whatever they want with their property. The city of Madison will not want us to go away, so owners are dissuaded from this action. Which also, just to add in my 2 cents on that, it also, as we're looking to expand, I think in our best interest is anything we can do to keep Madison, city of Madison in the loop, and local partners as far as our value is beneficial for us, because things like this, or if they are developing the area, if we could be like, but hey, look, this is how many people we're reaching on a month, over a year. These are all the businesses we're touching. It just adds more perceived value to the Bodgery. A second is a question from Brian. When would you think that we would start looking for a building of our own?
The board has already talked about it, and folks on Slack have mentioned it. It is definitely, I think everyone believes that it's time after our current lease to look for a building to buy. So that would be 6.5 years from now. And we'd have to look before then. We'd also, if we're really going to do it, need to fundraise before then. So we've talked about saving money for that, and we absolutely should. But that is something that certainly we've seen, again, in Sector's example of fundraising for that. I think that's kind of essential. So to fundraise that kind of money, it's a couple of years of a campaign.
So some of the phrasing that I've been using for that is Bodgery 4.0, because we don't know if that's going to be buy a new building. We don't know if it's going to be build a new building. We don't know if it's just leasing something else. Maybe we lease here again for another 6 years. We don't know what Bodgery 4.0 will be, but we know it will be expensive. So that's kind of what we're planning for now, is just saving money, and more than that is probably more planning than it's worth at this stage.
Yeah. And hang on, Tony, and then John.
So Lucas, in regards to an answer about burnout, reminding people, volunteer of an area captain. They'll all have something they can use help with, be it training, maintenance, build out. So that's the number one way you can help to address burnout for area captains and board members, is volunteer.
And Chuck?
Do we have, we've talked about our growth and up to 300 members now. Do we have rates of attrition? Have we been losing anybody?
Yeah, that number is growing at a,
Do you have any, I mean, for 50 new members, how many?
so we've been losing about 6, 8 at the most 10.
Per 50
per-
growth?
Yeah, per, yeah,
Well,
yeah, thereabouts. That deserves another look. We used to make those a little more regularly, like, just, the growth chart over time, and, well, we've been busy.
We were able to, before, Sean and Luke did a very robust chart of both our membership and its churn, its net. And they projected, I think it was about 2.5 new members a month.
Oh, so that was
But that was before.
the one I came up with at the old building.
Okay.
We haven't really done a serious one at here.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
this is a whole new game. I mean, I do most of the orientations, and we're getting usually 8 to 14 new members every week. And that will stop at some point, like that will slow down. And I keep thinking it's going to, and it keeps not doing that, so.
A typical cycle for makerspaces is that you see people kind of drop off in November and December as people just kind of do things for the holidays, and then it picks up again in late January because people want to get out of the house. We haven't seen that this year just because we're riding this wave of publicity, but we can kind of expect that in the future.
just like a health club, huh?
Yeah.
Drops off at the holidays.
Yeah,
drops up in
it's
January.
pretty much.
Yeah, this is Paul. And back to the question of board layout, et cetera, and volunteering. I'm assuming that somewhere there's a list of who the area captains are.
There is.
And if someone could point me to that, that would be great.
Absolutely. So the question is there a list of area captains? It is on our wiki. I apologize, we sort of buried the wiki. In our last website, it was front and center. The designers thought it was sort of extra, so they put it in way down at the bottom footer.
Bottom center.
But it is, if you go down at the bottom of our website, it says wiki, click that. And then you go there and there's a bunch of information. And actually that information is more useful for members because it's like, hey, who's the leadership here and how do we get a hold of them and who are the area captains and what are the ways to reach, what are the email addresses for the areas, all that kind of stuff. So it is there. It also needs to be updated. All right, other questions? Doug?
Well, getting back to whether or not to expand into that space, what is driving the demand for new space? Is it more shop type space? Is it people want studios? What is the driving need to get more square footage?
Okay, so the question is, what is the driving need behind behind expanding? Why do we need to expand? And I want to preface this response with saying that let's talk, because this is going to open up that can of what should we do with the space, and what about this, what about that? So let's not totally go there, but let's answer this question: why should we even expand? Like, aren't we fine?
Opportunity is one. They just the old lease just didn't happen for them, and so this all of a sudden showed up on our radar that this is a possibility.
Yeah, so it's so one part is what we need now. Another part is what we believe we'll need later, and so we're gonna keep growing, and so reserving the spot for later. Tony?
One thing to share, and you can provide this number better than I can, but from what I recall, how many years was the process between being at Robertson Road and realizing we needed to grow before we found this location? Because that goes and ties into the opportunities.
Yeah, it took us a while to get here. I mean, these landlords move glacially slowly, and so it took us a year from let's do this to the signed lease. I mean, but that's atypical.
But it was also even before then when we decided, hey, we need to expand. It was another year and a half before the Oscar Mayer location came up as an opportunity of just trying to find something that was even remotely reasonable. And by trying to find, I mean, we hit at least half a dozen locations where we went, talked to the landlord, looked at the space, and in some cases had them pulled out from under us, in some cases had them not really be worthwhile. So the opportunity here is huge. And it's not something that happens every day, especially in Madison for this size.
So opportunity is certain.
Well, that ties back in with some other questions about, when we want to look for a space in the future. That's going to be a tough bill to fill. Location, like some sort of central location, kind of near the happenings of Madison, and size and affordability. Like that's a tough.
I think we want to start doing this process about 4.5 years from now.
So yes, but to get back to your question, like what's the strain? More people equals a couple of things. This is why, I know I keep harping on this. This is why storage is so important. Last time when we were planning this out, I kind of let this slip away, and I'm going to, over my dead body this time. We need storage. We need storage for members. We tell members when they orient and when they sign up, you get a storage shelf. Some have suggested, well, that's optional. Like, we don't have to do that necessarily, but that doesn't feel right to me. But even if everybody doesn't get one, we still need a lot more than we have now. We have 150 spaces. We have 300 members. We have 150 spaces right now. So look around. Where's that going to go? So there's that. There's project storage. The project storage area is not big enough for the number of members we have. It certainly wasn't big enough over Christmas when people were doing all kinds of things. So we need spaces to put projects that are larger. 2 feet of shelf is just not enough. We need people to be able to work on a big project and have fun with that and have a place to put it that they like. And so people have talked about, we need horizontal storage versus just a spot on the floor. Well, okay, there's space. So there's all of that. So people need working room. If we clear out all of the storage from here, we could fill that space. You look at, I think actually a real choke point is jewelry, stained glass, hot glass, and leatherworking all in one space. I think they would really benefit, especially as they get busier, from more space. So you take 2 of those out and put it somewhere else. We do more assembly tables. So I would say that's a lot of what our usage. We've certainly seen from the wood shop that they have some constriction things that they're worried about. Again, let's address that later. But that's a choke point as well.
James wants to expand upon that. James says, I think we need to also call out the need not only for more member storage, but more member storage options. People want to be able to keep larger materials here.
Yeah, we certainly, and one of the things we've talked about is, so we've been around for like 5.5 years as a space, right? One of the things I've noticed is some of the most like creative people of like wild, fanciful things and amazing are some of the least good with boundaries around storing things, right? And so it's a thing, like on one hand, you're like, let's be fair. Everybody should get the same. And I believe in that. That's a good thing. At the same time, you're like, damn, like this is really cool stuff. So where do we put that stuff? And so there's those kind of things. There's the electric vehicles and the large items, and I mean just things that happen that you want around as inspiration. You want people to walk in this front door and go, ooh, wow. We can be very utilitarian and have everything kind of in its place and tucked away, and that's great. But if we don't have room for inspiration and creativity and fancifulness, I mean, that gets people excited and attracted to membership and having a studio and all. So it impacts our revenue. So we have to find other storage spaces for those kind of things as well. So to James's point. Is that enough of an answer? Okay. So it feels like, not to push this along, but our treasurer has said that given projections, and this is with 6 new studios, which is far below what we hope to put in there.
But that's the point, is to be a little conservative in this estimate.
Yeah, and Sean does an excellent job of always having the but pessimistic approach, which is great, which is
Perfect
very
for a treasurer.
dependable. Yes. And so if I can just say that it means something to me that even he is somewhat confident and optimistic that this would work. What do you think about, let's call the vote. Do you think we should do it? We should expand? We're not talking about how to use the space yet, but should we take advantage of this opportunity or should we hold back?
Expand. Give it 10 seconds for people on the live stream to catch up in case they have comments, because we do have a delay there.
Yeah.
So everybody, just relax.
Procedurally, do we need to send out a member-wide vote, official?
So we will, yeah, you're right. So we should vote through the whole membership, whether somebody can be here or not, et cetera.
Yeah.
But let's get a feeling in the room, and I hate to do
we
this.
need a motion on the floor? Do you like to do it that way? Or
It's
you
not
don't?
really a.
We're pretty informal.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's-
great.
but just-
Fine. I just wanna
at
make
this
sure.
point.
I'm just wondering,
Yeah,
my
yeah,
question
I
was
get that.
about that, yeah.
Yeah, so just for right now, if you think we should expand, raise your hand. Okay.
And Tony, give us a count.
So the one big question that's been brought up is concerns over what the possibilities for use of the space are and wanting to wait until after that's discussed. That aside, we have a large support. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A third of the people on YouTube and a sixth of the people who of the people who are on the Oscar Mayer Development Slack channel, all 6 universally say yes, expand.
Oh, universally. What might be more interesting is what are possible objections, and I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable and single them out. But it's good to hear. So I heard one about let's wait till we know what the space is being used for. Is that the one point
So
resistance?
that's been the one point that's been brought up is
Just
well, what are we going to use the space for?
Fair enough. Any?
Okay. And so as Sean says, it's a safe space. If you feel that there's still a concern, what should we be concerned about?
I mean, that's far more interesting than just everyone.
And I will say for those online, almost every hand was raised here. So there's support. So we all get that there's support. Now let's talk about what's the other side.
Well, the real, any reluctance in the expansion here, I think centers around, financial sustainability. And Sean seems to have pointed us in a direction with his projections.
And again, in those kind of, not worst case, because the world could end tomorrow, right? But in kind of the more pessimistic scenarios, we have to tighten our belts, and we can't get some of the new tools that we want over time. And we wouldn't be able to afford help, and we wouldn't be saving to move, like it sounds like is fairly important. So those are real risks if there is a decline or a downturn or whatever. So this is, we can afford it in a lot of different ways we paint it, but we have to tighten our belts.
So the comment was a concern would be financial sustainability. Sean answered that. And
Sorry, yeah.
Well, Roger, you've had your hand up for a while.
Just as a couple of side notes, 1000 closed its door to studios. So there's about a dozen people that are looking for studios again.
They did?
Yes, they did. They're concentrating on their shop, whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but they closed down the studios.
They pivoted. Right. Okay. So the comment is that 1000, which is sort of an artist collective / space. I hate to call it a makerspace, but they just closed down their studios, which means that there are a dozen-ish people that would be looking. And we have had members from 1000 come here. I'm sure, and we've had members of the Bodgery go there. So Paul. Oh, okay. Was there another? Okay. Okay. Tim, Scott.
Studios I think is where I've kind of been pushing for using a lot of this space, because I think it can be a self-sustaining revenue for that space. It can totally pay for itself. because we are cheap, and part of being cheap means that if there is some kind of downturn, we have that padding in studios. And they're so cheap that businesses might flock into us. So I know, John, you've probably been exasperated with how much I've kind of pushed it in that area.
We have a
but I
different
do-
number at how many studios we
yes,
should have.
yeah, I do. I am more aggressive on that, but I think that is our padding there.
Yeah. And I will say, just on that, sorry to interrupt, but that from the fundraising perspective, I think that's a selling point. If we can say this is a business creator, this is a way for people to get in inexpensively and start a business, that plays well. Scott.
Projecting to a somewhat negative case, but not, some end of the world scenario. When we're renting these spaces and have these long-term leases, what if we run out of money in default? What happens?
So the question is, what if in a 7-year lease, what if we run out of money and we default?
I was looking at the contract and they just,
Uh,
they take it from, they kick us out.
Yeah, I imagine they take everything we have as a nonprofit and
Go into bankruptcy like many other businesses
the
do.
directors could be sued.
Okay. I was
By
worried about
directors,
that.
I mean board.
Do we have E&O insurance?
We do not have director insurance. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, you should get it
Yeah, we should.
tomorrow.
So John,
Monday.
For my own
Okay,
sake, we should.
So,
yes.
the number I'm hearing for rent is how much?
4,000 a month.
4,000 a month, and our, not utilities, but the support,
Cam.
Yep, is how much?
We don't know.
We
Well,
don't know,
we
but
have an idea.
the estimates they gave us, so right now, the estimate is like 1,200 a month, and that'll jump to about 2,000 a month.
So we're at about 6,000. And then projected build-out
That'd be
cost?
5,200, but yeah.
Projected build-out cost, do we know? That we would, amortize?
Well,
that
we
over
know how much we
time?
spent on electric already, 39. What's that?
Wild ass.
Well, what would a wild ass guess be?
Okay, so
10,000.
I want to reserve part of this for the conversation about what do we do with the space,
Yeah.
because it all depends on what we do with the
Yeah.
space. If we duplicate the wood shop, costly.
Yeah,
If
that's,
we go in and we just do some circuits for studios and a bunch of storage, cheap. Electric, 15,000. Wild ass guess, there you go, 15,000. It's already got the water that we need, etc.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's just,
We have a bunch of questions online, and also we're running about 10 to 15 seconds behind. So we need to slow things down a little bit
okay,
because we're getting questions by the time they come in. We've moved 3 steps beyond them.
okay, so let's,
So to back up a bit,
okay.
multiple comments on Midwest Clay is moving into the 1,000 space, and at that point they will be offering studios. So there is a small opportunity there to market to that. Secondly, Brian King mentions it seems that the expansion is important to growing revenue enough to be able to sustain our long-term future. Randy Nelson, remember the possibility of cart space rental. I'm in favor of expanding. Would the landlord install a door between spaces? Randy, he said he would, and that's actually, I'm going to pull up the architectural drawing, and if you look, you'll see it on the top and bottom of the yellow line in the right third. There's tentative drawing spaces that are there in between the 2 spaces, or current space and the new one.
sorry.
Yep, right there. Well, you can't see John pointing really, but he's pointing. He really is. Next, that was brought up. Gary on Slack brings up, considering that we do very little marketing or outreach, if we find we need more memberships, there's an entire area of strategic membership drives that can be put into play. And one thing that Tony, me, wants to bring up as well, as we're moving forward and talking about potential space use, remember, nothing's really set in stone. Nothing says that what we do for the initial rollout to get the space can't be changed as we decide that our growth needs require that. One more question that came, or comment that came in from James. When we moved into C, part of the lease included a build-out allowance. Could the same happen with B?
I would hope so. I have not heard anything from the landlords on that item, so I don't know, but I would assume so. I mean, why would we get a different deal than any other renter would get when they move in? So, unless, I know we got a couple questions back here. Yeah. Doug?
This is not to be interpreted as opposition to expanding, but I think there's an important step being skipped. Just the transition from like 50 members to 300 already has nearly broken the organizational capability of Bodgery. You're talking about ratcheting up yet another notch, skipping the step of how do we improve our organizational structure even where we're at now, you know?
So the comment is, for those that couldn't hear it, where this could be skipping a step in that we have already had a lot of stress on member services via the infrastructure that's not been expanded to suit the more members. And so if we ratchet up more, won't that put more pain into the system without a solution? That is true. I do think we have to, I think it's true. We do have to address our infrastructure. That is going to be there. There are ways that we can do better. It's a bit of a catch-22. You need more time and effort to make from busy people that don't have, to make more opportunity so that those people don't burn out. So in order to make changes to the infrastructure, that takes time and effort. And so you've got a bunch of people that are already overstrapped for that. So not to whine, I'm just saying, so that's part of it. I agree that we do need to look at expanding the infrastructure. Yes, and Tim and...
Yeah, I'm getting the impression that there are a lot of people who want to help out, but aren't sure how.
Yes.
I think that's where we need to focus on, is giving more specific tasks and direction of how people can volunteer.
Yeah, an example of that is people have asked, I want to do something. What do I do? And we're like, oh, there's a Kanban board. There's a whole board. That has been I've been meaning to put the Kanban board up across from the bathrooms for a month. I just never get to it because I'm doing other things. And so that's what I mean about that. It's a bit of a catch-22. But yeah, so I think we could do better at capturing interest in helping and making the infrastructure better.
I guess I would like a little more clarity on what you mean. What are some of the stresses that you're talking about specifically? Is it members saying that they can't use equipment, or maybe I've seen it on Slack.
So the question is, what is the stress on the system? And I would say that tool training is certainly something that people would like better. Tool fixing is something. With the more use we get of the woodshop in particular, those tools are getting used up more often, needing repair more often. I would say that there's with the more use, there's this sense of needing better kind of watching what's going on, so someone isn't able to really wreck a machine because they didn't know what they were doing. Those are certainly things. Anything else to add about that? Yes, Gary?
I think that when you look at the amount of people, you start out with 50 people, you got 300 people. That is stress in itself, the amount of people that come through here. If people come here and they can't get to the tools that they want to use, they're not going to stick around long, regardless whether it's metal or, So it has to be in the idea of the growth. If you're going to grow in people, you got to grow in space if you want everybody to be able to use what you got. That's the community,
Yeah. So we do definitely need to address the infrastructure improvement, and I don't know that not expanding would necessarily help us, because part of what I think is that this space, while certainly, Karen has brought up the fact that Pumping Station 1 has 1 million members and less space than we have. So, okay, sure, it can be done. And I say, with love and respect, that we don't necessarily want a crappy, we can do it. We can have dig and save here, or we can have, a place that you want. I know dig and save is wonderful, but come on. So, there are different models for how you can have a makerspace. And I think that the more always, as we can aim to be professional and a good service and nice to look at and well operational, that we do better if we have enough space to do that in. And I think we're not just talking about today. We're talking about 6 years from now or 4 years from now. We're going to keep growing, and it's going to get tighter and tighter. And And Roger?
Just as a point of reference, the point of feasibility for the other side is 32 studios, which would take 1,500 square feet of that space. So there's 2,500 square feet of space left to do whatever you want. Then that space would pay for itself. We right now have 20 studios in this space. And we have at least a dozen more people who are looking for studio space.
So you mean the 32 total studios? Or 32 more?
studios at the current price would pay for that expansion.
So Roger's comment is that 32 studios at the current price would pay for the expansion, pay for itself, and that would take up 1,500 square feet, of which there are 8,000 square feet to do things with. So yeah, the revenue models certainly work out if we can get people interested in studios.
I caught someone, I caught you saying there's lots of interest in studios. Everyone out there in TV land, let me know about it because there's only 2 people on the waiting list.
I'm interested.
There you go.
Very nice.
4 people. 5
All
people on the
right,
waiting list.
just send treasurer at thebodgery.org an email, and I'll put you on the waiting list.
I think I have David, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 things. One, we'll probably want to put something marketed on the Slack channel to remind people of that.
Sure.
And just make sure it's brought up repeatedly. 2, Sylvia asks, can we consider offering slightly larger studio spaces, say an 8x10 space?
Yeah, I think there's potential there. Also, we've seen folks string things together. Oh, by the way, can I just mention, James, I know you're grimacing right now. Haha, you're not here. We've seen real interest in stringing them together, having doubles sideways or doubles lengthwise. Something I've noticed with Jay in the boat builder is that he's got it, but it's awkward for him because he needs to like pull it out past a bunch of things so he can get it into the wood shop. So I think, all right, so how can we lay them out over there so they do that, so they're more flexible, or there's, I don't know, bigger aisles or all of that kind of business. There's ways that we could do that. And then back to JT's point, he said, tier the costs as well. I was talking about the wood shop, and that wood shop space is now so valuable per square foot, right? Because it's crowded. And he said, well, then why aren't your wood shop studios more expensive? Sorry, Jason, Chris, and Ryan. So he said, so if it's more interested or if it's more valuable, raise the prices. And so I'm not saying necessarily we should do that, just to point out like, oh, there's options. There's options here. Another thing that I think we could really do is market something Jesse, who came from sector and has talked about, so he learned a lot there about things that worked well. And he said, you guys should really be renting desk space out. He said, because there are businesses that want to have their people be able to, so they'll buy the space for their people, or rent the space for their people, so that they can come in and be in a creative space. Because, it's all like cubicles and offices and da-da-da, but they have designers, or they have, maybe product people, and they would rent a desk, or someone else would rent a desk. And he said, at a co-working space, it's $150 a month. Just to you don't even get to keep that desk, you just get access to a desk when you come in. So there are other options here beyond what we already know of studios. Tony.
2 things. First, I'm going to jump in with one thing myself. As we're looking at rental opportunities, one thing that I thought that would be a possibility would be rolling cart rental. So, like personally, I have a bunch of tools that I'd love the opportunity to bring a tool chest in and just have my locked tool chest available, and that's something where they're on wheels. So it could just be, here's the cart corral. You put them there when you're done with them. This is storage. Here's the fee for them. This is the rate, and this is the size dimensions that we allow. Secondly, online from Slack from Casey, we got a long wall of text here. Casey says, first off, I love the Bodgery. Great space. Everyone is doing a great job. Some of my concerns. We don't seem to have a real feel for the cost of a full replacement plan. What would it cost in 5 or 7 years to replace our space and move? It's no small task.
We do have numbers. I forget the tally. I was keeping it. Was it like 70 or what? We had been tracking the moving expenses in their entirety, and so we kind of have a feel. Obviously, each space is going to have different challenges, but do you remember what that was? I can look that up. But we're tracking.
How about this? Excellent point, Casey. We should totally do that.
Continuing on, size of space likely won't stop growth. Milwaukee has a ton of people in a smaller space. And just to point out, Casey, it was brought up, they're looking at similar numbers to what we're at right now. I believe that we're at 350 people. But Milwaukee also has a really great setup for member storage.
And by the way, they are expanding. They just bought a 40,000 square foot building in another part of the city, and they're rebuilding it. They're expanding too. So.
Continuing on, I agree to expand, but it has to make sense. Just storage seems like a wild misuse of the space. My 2 cents from what I've seen so far. Next point, more tools like a CNC router will bring in more members than just having storage. And then a couple high-level points that Casey brings up. As far as ideas, move the entire wood shop in the new space, allocate 3/4 of the space to that. The remainder of the new space is built into storage and studios. Move the in-shop studios to the new space. With the new space in the wood shop, fill in areas that are tight to put in tools like the CNC router and the like, just as far as ideas. And then I'm just going to catch up on a couple more comments here because it's a bunch of comments people made. A couple people commented, including Wolfgang, hey, I'm interested in studio space. You know who to contact. Go for
Ask
Sean. James says, I'm okay with custom studios in the new space. I was against it in the current space due to space constraints. Suck it, John. And then, wow, just a ton of people agreeing with the suck it, John part. So.
Thank you all so much. Yeah. So there were real questions in there, comments.
Weekly studio space rentals, and I think that also goes to the desk rentals, is looking for other opportunities to be revenue generating, yet still fall within what our mission is as a makerspace.
Yeah, I think very interesting. And one of the opportunities of this space, so 2 things about space usage, or 3. 1, keep in mind, part of this is not for today, part of this is for 2 years from now. 2, having that space means that it gives us, it allows us to be creative. Like, what would we do with that space? Because up to this point, we have only done what we've always done, right? We added studios this time, but who knows what we could do over there? There could be businesses we operate. And Casey is a person who has been pushing hard, I apologize, Casey, for us he wants to fundraise such that they could do a prototyping lab, because he feels that that's a real lack in actually not just Madison, but this part of the state. He believes that he could get large machinery such that could be maintained, and then that would be a revenue source of renting that out. So he's got big plans for things that could happen there. So opportunity there, letting us get creative, like, oh yeah, what about a studio for a week? That's interesting. What about, all of that kind of business? And then 3, keep in mind when we talk about usage, and when you hear my boring, unsexy ideas, cost and phase 1, phase 2. We can move that wood shop over there at any point. Any point. It could be when we first start. It could be a year from now. It could be 3 years from now. So,
or in pieces.
I think pieces is hard, but sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, so it doesn't squash, like, keep the big ideas. This isn't necessarily any kind of, if we can't afford it, that doesn't mean we can't ever afford it. It just means we need to move slowly. I can't stress enough. I mean, I think one of the best uses of the space, personally, would be to move the wood shop over there and do a bunch of wood studios and blah, blah. Absolutely. I mean, it's clearly the space that needs it. However, that is a lot of money. Seriously, like,
sweat equity.
yeah, it's 110, it's 220, hopefully not 3-phase. But I mean, there's the ventilation we have to think about. There's a bunch of costs inherent in that. So let's not say, even if the wood shop doesn't get moved right away, because we want to be sustainable and bootstrap our way into this, then it doesn't mean that we can't plan for a year from now or 2 years from now. We put something in there that's fairly flexible and mobile, because one of the things we're going to need to build over there is a wall, such that the dust doesn't get to all of those studios. So.
Well, to me, I mean, what you're saying, looking at the design and just thinking, expansion of the wood shop, is there any code reason why the wood shop can't be expanded in that direction when it's needed?
Build the building?
Well, but is it easier to do that and deal with the dust there when you have all of the electrical?
That'll be Robertson all over again.
Yeah, so-
Everything in Robertson was covered with a 1/4 inch of dust.
Yep,
Everything.
that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, so we could, yes, we could expand the current wood shop, but we'd have to build a very serious wall.
Well, exactly.
Yeah,
And is
so-
that more cost effective than moving the
So-
entire wood shop and
so
all the
it
infrastructure?
may or may not be. The big problem with building walls is the curve of this ceiling is very difficult.
Yeah, but if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying, well, we could build a wall over there, or we could build a wall over
Well,
here.
so
And
you
here the
have,
power already exists.
you have everything here in terms of infrastructure. Is it more cost
You
effective?
wouldn't have any of that in the space that was expanded.
Well, but it's close by, a lot closer than starting over
It's
here.
illegal, the electricians don't care.
Yeah, so,
Except
okay.
you'd have half of the space already done if you were gonna do
Yeah,
it.
and you could devote that entire area to studios and not have to worry about dust at all.
Yes, so certainly, yes. I mean, so clearly the wood shop is crowded and needs more space. So let's just make sure that we are shifting into the next section of the talk. And the next section is what should we do with the space, right? So we've answered that we should, outside of a vote that we're gonna take officially, so check your email for that. We're done with that, Tim?
Small detail that might feed into this. Did I hear right that there's no 3-phase on the panels over there?
I don't know.
Okay.
Find that out easily.
Yeah.
Okay, somehow I picked that up at some point and it seemed kind of odd to me, but
I would guess that that's true though, because
Yeah.
when we bargained for 3-phase here, it was a hard push.
okay.
Okay, before we move forward, so we're looking at moving forward to the next phase of the conversation right now. If you could just take a moment and give us an overview of what we're covering, what we're talking about in the next phase, and then let's take 5 minutes, because we've been on for a little over an hour. So people do need to grab a drink, do need to take a bio break, and gather their thoughts before we continue on to the next part
Actually,
of the
that's a great idea.
conversation.
Should we just take 5 minutes out, or do you want me to? would you
Just
want me to-
explain what we have coming so people have an idea of what questions to start thinking about.
Okay, so I remember there was a comment, I don't remember who it was from, that said, well, I don't know that I can vote for whether or not we should expand unless we talk about what we're gonna do with the space. So that, in a sense, would be what's coming up is, all right, so let's say there is a space available, what would we do with it? That's that, and what we'd like to do is try and, so it's 11:07. If we could finish by 11:30, so that conversation is much bigger than 25 minutes. I know, and there's a lot of different ideas, and so yeah, we've got a lot of brilliant ideas and a lot of brilliant people. So we're never going to come. Consensus will be challenging.
Would it make sense to make like a Slack channel for like new space ideas, and then people could just post in there so that we can cover some ideas and stuff here, but then they can continue the conversation there.
Good. So the comment is, would it make sense to start a Slack channel for conversations and ideas about what to do with the new space and all of that? And luckily, hashtag Oscar Mayer Development is there. So many of you, if you don't already know, on Slack, you were signed up with a handful of channels. There are many more. So click on the channels and look at all the ones that are available. So Oscar Mayer Development. Justin just brought that up, that we should probably stop cluttering the general channel with that and move it to there. So that does exist. Thank you for that suggestion.
So it's 11:09. We're going to take a 6-minute break. So 11:15, we'll continue. Grab a drink, take a break, think of questions.
There is hot chocolate and muffins in the kitchen. Help yourself.
Thank you. It's exactly. It works. It doesn't insult anyone.
Yeah, so are you going now? Sounds like Aaron's going over there right now. You go out our back door, okay, towards Oscar Mayer to the first people door you can find. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Good job.
Are we gonna go over there afterwards also? Okay.
32 studios.
One of those studios.
Nice job.
Current studios are 32 square feet. or 48, or 8 by 6. So it's 48 you're at $125.
So that would only come to roughly this amount.
That would pay the 4,000.
Well, see, and that's my issue, is I calculate that's more.
Oh, yeah. With
And
and
amortizing the build up.
What's quick and easy to do.
Over 7
I'm
years.
just, that would pay rent. Any more than that. I mean, if we try and do half studios,
That's
then we
just mine.
convert the other half.
Somehow we need to make the storage sound sexy.
Okay.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, over my dead body, we don't. put
Yeah,
storage in.
it's boring, but we need it.
We do, and it's 8,000 square feet, so we don't need that much of it, but we just have to make sure to tape it off on the floor and be like, do not put tools here. Hey. Okay.
Very good.
Ready?
Um,
For what? I don't know how we're gonna do it online. Because you know it's gonna be like, we're not gonna do it. I mean, how we're gonna echo it for online people.
I think also to bring up for the next board meeting is purchasing a scissor lift or something we can use for doing ceiling stuff. We're gonna need it for that. We need it for if we're gonna do pallet racks here, and if we want to do lighting or anything like that, we need to buy one.
Well, there's Sean.
Tight lipped.
I was exactly thinking of how much that would cost.
I can see that.
I mean, it does cost, but we need it. We just need it.
Well, and I think part of it, so for your calculations, might be when does renting it enough pay for buying the used one? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure,
we're gonna have to rent it, so if we rent it by the week, what does that cost? How many weeks does it take?
Be sure to include delivery and both
Yeah.
and pickup.
Yeah, that was
They charge plenty for that.
non-trivial, to be sure.
I think what we all have to keep in mind is what we're
Uh,
worried about when.
Let's find a cheap one. Well, maybe we don't want a cheap one then, but
I see the thing about scissors is that there's a dozen details. Details are 150, 200, 350 bucks a piece.
Yeah.
oh,
So you can buy
Batteries.
some for $1,200.
I like the
You
idea.
put $2,000 worth of batteries in.
We should go
And that's low sale. Batteries will only run for an hour.
financial impact as possible.
So you start replacing batteries in it at $350
Workshop over there with it's not financial possible.
You know, that's how do they charge? Do they have a thing on the wall or?
built-in chargers.
Okay.
Just plug into 10 hours.
Okay. So worst case scenario, you can plug them in and use them with a, okay.
yeah, actually. Yeah, we're not a warehouse. I mean, we're gonna use it occasionally,
I'm just
right?
saying, like, the pushback we had, like, the reason that they balked in the negotiation in our lease was because I wanted both single phase and three phase. They were like, oh, hold on. And then that's when they're like, oh, you can do everything with three phase. I'm like, no, you can't.
Take one leg.
Well, not for 220 though. There are, no, but there are machines that 208 versus 230.
It's a two-legged beast.
There are machines that don't run as well on it. And so, sure, and so my guess is that there's single phase,
Okay.
but I don't know. So, but there might just be three phase, or there might just be four. But to have both would be tricky. What three phase machines do we have?
Yeah, I'm kind of debating whether or not.
Dust collector.
Dust collector will be a free for this year, for this year already. But it's like,
I have a C-20 industrial, 16 foot.
earlier, we have a 2014 operating.
Yeah.
So, and there's no way, it's also an automatic.
I put one in before.
I still need a three-phase
Honestly,
socket.
for this daily driving and this
Yes. Yes, he is.
Well, the best I can do for you is 500 watt line.
I was looking at that might start.
Nice.
So those are, I mean, there's like 500 made.
But yeah, so
Yeah, I can't give it up.
Don't do that again.
Okay, we'll be going live in about a minute.
okay.
mother used to take us over the woods over, these little kids to say.
Thanks for keeping us on track,
No
Tony.
problem.
I bet a bunch of people are over on the other space. So this is a good conversation online, because I don't know how we're gonna do this online with the kind of back and forth we're gonna get in this.
Oh, that's going to be pretty easy. We're going to unplug my computer that's fully charged. We're going to switch over to just using the webcam, and we're going to actually move this in with us and bring it with us.
Oh. Well, why don't we have the next conversation next door then?
We could do that.
All right. So for those online, we're gonna move you with us to the next place. So
Field
let's
trip.
head over there. I'm gonna run around the shop and make sure people know we're moving.
And we might cut out for a minute while I switch audio devices. Audio quality won't be as good, but we'll try doing what we can.
Go next door for the conversation. Go. See you over there.
Where's the? We're going through the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, actually, if somebody would open up the back, you could go through the front. It's a lot easier. Yeah, you should.
Yeah. Somebody want to open the front for me, and I
Yeah.
can just swing around.
We're gonna go talk in the other space.
Oh, okay.
And does that? My only concern is whether we have Wi-Fi over there. If we're getting enough signal. Now that I think about it. So if we don't, I'll just reconnect via my phone.
We're gonna meet over there next.
Yeah, if somebody can.
I know. We're gonna go meet over there.
Do you need help carrying things out?
I might. I think it should be good. Let's see.
don't have muffins over there.
And no hot chocolate.
So all of this needs to go, like the microphone?
No, we're just gonna go with these two right here.
Oh, okay. You want your phone?
Which one is it? No, that's my backup. We're good. Thank you, though. We do these through work as well, so it's, you always know, have the Verizon phone, have the AT&T phone, have the T-Mobile just in case.
Damn. Where do you work?
I work for UW Extension.
Oh, okay.
Sending folks.
We're based here in Madison, so I'm with the administration.
So Lake Street.
Yeah, so I'm in the Powell Center. Can I borrow your hand for a sec? Just hold on to that so I can set this down. Oh wait, there's a secondary back there too.
Yeah, we're not, that's not our.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
This is the space we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that if I'm staying right here, I should be okay.
Breaker up.
All right, that'll work.
It might be a breaker.
Can someone grab that table if that's mobile?
It's a little sturdy.
That's fine.
Actually, what over this?
Dude, a new welding table. Awesome. There you go.
Oh, crap.
Well, yeah, well, there's a white wall over here. To those people who are online, if you can just let us know if you can hear me. Okay, this is Tony. I know there's a lot of background noise. We'll get people to quiet down as we start, but this is the new location.
So for those of you that are joining for the first time, what we've talked about is trying to... Should I talk right here?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Welcome, online folks. So what we've talked about doing over here is moving to a second phase of the conversation. What could we do with this space? And so this, there's a lot of things that could be used for this space. Again, I'd like to set the ground rule. I know I'm a nag. I'm sorry. We need to be able to afford this moving in, which means we cannot rewire this. You will notice that there is not electricity all around the walls. So if you want to run anything with power, you will need electricity. And so we would need to pay for that. A minimum installation here of, let's just say, studio kind of stuff would probably be $15,000. We spent $39,000 to outfit our whole shop next door, so that's probably a top. The power that is here, we discover now, is all three-phase, which means you can use 110 like normal. You can use most 220 level tools because they're 208. So, but not necessarily everything. So there's that. So there would be doors. Ideally, there'd be a door on this end, kind of where the clean room is, maybe like a single person door. And then on the shop end, there would be at least double doors so that you can move machinery between the spaces and big stuff. There, you'll notice there's no roll-up door yet here in the back. So if you really want to get a forklift in here, that'd be a little challenging. All right, so we talked about a couple of options. One is, imagine, say, this seems like kind of the nicer side of things. This would be a bunch of studios in here. Imagine there could be either here or over there, member storage, project storage, and then other storage. There could be assembly and work tables here, right? So more people want to do things. We could. You've got a lot of the things that are getting in the way, in a sense, are cluttering up spaces. Are woodworking projects. I say that with love. But so we could have a lot of space for woodworking projects, so that you always felt like you had a nice spot to put your project and not worry about it getting bumped or shifted or whatever. So there's that. You could store wood materials here. Not that we necessarily want to become a Menards or etc., but at least if somebody wanted to bring a load of wood and store it while they're doing their projects, there could be room for that here. So those things, the nice thing about them is they don't take a lot of electricity, certainly not the storage, and the studios would just need 110 outlets, circuits, so they'd be pretty inexpensive. Other options have been like, what about moving the wood shop over here? If you do that, we'd need a lot more electricity in here. We need to create a wall. So imagine doing a wall in here. It's easy up to the bottom of the girders, right? Above there, it gets annoying. But we will never, as long as I'm alive, have a wood shop in here that doesn't have a wall around it, just because it coats everything in dust. We learned that in the last place. So we'd have to do that. It can certainly be done. It can certainly be done. So it would need that. We can move all of the dust collection equipment over here. We can move all the tools over here. It'd be a lot of work, but it can be done. So that's another option for the space. Also remember that what we do on day one does not necessarily mean what we do on day, year two. We have 300 members right now. We will have more in 3 months, which means we'll have more revenue. if we get some studios in here, we will have more revenue than that. So once we have that kind of revenue, we can start paying for more electric. We can start paying for building a wall. We can move things in here later that we're not going to do on day one. So, all right, with that being said, John.
By code, does a wall have to be rigid all the way up? Does it have to be
To collect dust, no.
To be a 2x4, it doesn't have to be a 2x4 stud wall above that.
It would have to be quite.
Okay, I do ask if you are asking a question, please come closer with all the echoing. People online will not be able to hear you unless you're about 6 feet away at most from the camera.
It could be plastic sheeting,
Yeah.
tarp.
Yeah, as long as it keeps dust down. If there's no
Okay.
firewall in
Tim,
here
can you
right
move?
now-
Can you move up so they can hear you?
If there's no firewall in here right now, we wouldn't have to build. So it could be plastic sheet. Nothing in our
Go.
current space is a firewall.
But the sprinkler system's up in the ceiling.
Yes.
So if you want to continue the wall, you can't have a ceiling above the sprinklers or below the sprinklers. So if you want to completely enclose a room, you either have to go all the way up to the ceiling, or you have to put in a wall, put in a new ceiling, and then you have to drop the sprinkler system, right?
Yep. One of the things I've seen in other spaces, other maker spaces, is they have like the freezer curtains. And so the bottom of the wall could always be freezer curtains, because it would keep the dust out. You'd kind of like do this to go through it. The top would probably, I don't know, anyway.
Well, if you don't put any ceiling in though, the sprinklers are still accessible. All you just run a wall right up. And it looks like they're split also.
Seriously?
They're up by the ceiling.
Very
Oh,
close
good.
to the ceiling.
There's also electric. Your electric drops by each light. But I think those are just lights.
Yeah, they are in the other space. Sorry for everybody online, this is tricky. So other thoughts. So let's divide it into two thoughts. One is wood shop, and then let's talk about non-wood shop. Because honestly, I'm just telling you, as somebody who looks at the finances, I don't think we can afford wood shop on day one.
You can't afford to move it over here.
Right. To rebuild a wood shop here on day one. I'm not talking about year two, I'm just talking about day one.
I think there is something we can do for the wood shop. I think half of our issues with wood shop is just having enough space to work on stuff. And I think we could maybe move some things in here that would kind of alleviate at least some of them.
Yeah, if we take, so imagine all the member storage we have right now between the muralist studio, all of that goes away and comes in here. So now all of that space is available. This is painful for the people who have studios right there next outside of the spray room, but if those studios were to move, then that space could all be assembly table. The spray room could be drying space. So you've got a project, you just put some finish on it, you've got drying racks in there, and it's, you know, it's kind of sheeted off so there's not dust getting into it or something. Yes?
What's the most underutilized space in the existing space?
Define underutilized.
Not used a lot. Like the classroom. Whenever I'm here
Yeah.
quite a bit, and I've never really seen anybody in the classroom.
So yeah,
So to me, it would say take the most underutilized space and put it in here, which would require very little building.
So those spaces are getting built out, so probably just by not being utilized, it's screen printing and classroom. But both of those spaces are currently being built out, is the reason why you don't see them much. Classroom is going to get a lot bigger, because Mark just finished building out the computers in there, and we got to get some software on there yet. But then we're starting to host classes in there. So that's about to get where it should be. Screen printing is also coming along quite a bit. So I don't think that's totally fair to put it on those two spaces. Beyond that, I don't think we have a good feel of what's really utilized, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, and so there's the, you get that thing where, because there's a good wood shop, people who want to do woodworking are drawn to it, which means now there's more crowded.
they tell more people about the wood shop, so more people hear about it. So it's sort of a positive reinforcement loop versus areas that have, like, welding struggled for the longest time because we couldn't get a permit for it. So it didn't have much use, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a lot of potential use. It just means that there wasn't capacity there. And I know you're not saying get rid of these items, you're just saying move them.
Move the places that require the least amount of build out.
Yeah.
And use those space, I'm thinking of the classroom space and the space where the overhead door is. And that because that's where the heaviest infrastructure is.
Except that the classroom did require
Yes,
a great
it
deal
does.
of electrical work.
Yeah, there's a lot of sweat.
Well, and the thing to remember too is, and you can take a look just walking around, there's a lot of dead space that's currently used for member storage, for wood storage against the wall, the assembly tables that are in front of the jewelry area and by metalworking and such. Those are all ones where their assembly tables in particular are used beyond capacity right now. And I know personally, having just come back, I'm seeing a lot of the same problems from when I left the first time, where I want to come in, if I want to work on a project, we had to struggle to clear off a table. So as it is right now, if we're able to move member storage over, if we're able to set up just additional assembly and work tables over here, as well as clear up some more tables for use on that size, we're going to be alleviating space issues we have right now at very little to no cost.
Yeah. And I should say that, good point, and James, who, when he's not insulting hardworking people, has been fond of saying that there was a real difference in Robertson. We were extremely crowded, and then we had a work day where we shifted things around, and it got dramatically better. So just because our shop right now, and this is, I think, Ron, what you were saying, is that just because our shop looks a certain way now doesn't mean we can't change things and tweak things to make it much more useful. And certainly as you spill out of the wood shop into the big shop, there's a lot of ability to move things around such that we could make it a lot nicer to find workspace and drying space and storage space, etc., or glue up kind of thing is what I'm thinking. If you've got a table that you're working on and it's already glued up, there's no need for it to sit on a table. But if you have just glued something and you're nervous that if you move it, it's going to shift on you, okay, yes, that should probably stay in one place. So we have some spot for glue ups, we have some spots for drying racks, that sort of business. We have a lot of assembly space. It would mean moving those studios. It might mean, all those studios along, like even to where the muralists are, if we move them down the way, there's some options there so that we can make more usable space for the wood shop.
What's the timeline on acquiring this space, assuming that the landlord is moving less glacially, or even at their usual pace? What do you think the timeline would be if we said, yes, let's do it?
Okay.
Realistically, 6 months.
Okay.
You think?
That's probably less glacial than the land.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, Tim's more pessimistic than I, but he's probably right.
Sure.
I mean, I think they would probably do the floor like they did over in the clean room, which would be nice, so that'll take time. We'll want electric to be done, so that'll take some time, but they're actually pretty fast. Nickel's electric, once that gets going.
So I'm just, what I'm hearing is I'm thinking that the quick way to use the space and acquire it is studios, storage, and then let's see how that alleviates things there, and then there's a phase 2 of deciding what to do with the wood shop, and maybe it, just like you said, if you free up some space, we'll suddenly see, oh, it's not so crowded over there. So I guess I'm hearing just make it studios. That's what people want, and it sounds like that would be a quick way to just move forward.
Well, and I will say that we don't have to use studios and storage that I keep harping on, sorry, will not take up this whole space.
Right, I know.
Well, unless you go by Tim's idea, in which case he wants to fill the whole thing with studios.
Yes.
But I mean, but realistically, at least in phase 1 for studios, we could put 20 studios in here, 25 studios in here easily. and a bunch of storage and still have a quarter of the space left over. And we could, in a sense, this sounds weird, but like rope it off so that people don't, just like put stuff there, so that we save it for cool ideas that people are going to come up with. It doesn't have to all be unsexy, useful, pragmatic.
Two things. One, to help with the people who are connecting remotely. If we were to take the amount of space in the Robertson location and convert that all into studios, we'd still have over half of this space free and available. So to kind of put things into perspective, the sheer amount of space, you're talking about 2/3 of the space that's currently the new Bodgery location. So it's not a small amount. The camera is not doing it justice. In fact, if somebody can walk all the way back there, and I'm just going to camera on it, as you can see as he's walking back, that might give you a better idea as to just how much space we're talking about. While he's doing that, one of the questions that came up was if someone could discuss the plan as far as removal of studio spaces in the shop area.
Oh, okay, so now wave, Bob.
You have to stay there now.
No, come back. So it's not a plan to move studio space. And I know that is scary for the people who have studios there. It's an option. We have to talk about a lot of things, and nothing is going to happen until the community feels it's the right thing to do. So it's just an option.
What's the first part of what you just said? Repeat the first part of what you just said.
Bob, okay, come back. I said, even though it's scary for the studios, it's to move.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It's not a plan. It's just a hey, this could happen.
Yeah, sorry for spooking you that way, but yeah, it's just a plan. Not even a plan.
If you're gonna have studios in here, you could, some studios might need venting, right? Or do you have that in any of the plan for the studios that are there now? No.
As far as I'm aware, none of this, and I hope I would be aware, none of the studios need venting right now.
It could be an option. For jewelry, I'm not limited to the jewelry area if I want to do glass. So expanding something like the jewelry and glass area, and maybe renting bench space or studio space along a vented wall.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing leather work, sometimes you want to use some really bad glue. And it would be nice to have a space that's vented.
Yes. Well, and so if you look at this space, you see two walls with windows, right? So this front wall is kind of on the I don't know why, but it just feels like the cement underneath us is nicer in this half. So let's just say, this is just an option, not a plan, that this would be the nice side, the studios and the desks and all that kind of stuff. The other side would be more of where work happens. Where's Roger? Roger had mentioned this before. Moving jewelry and hot glass over here because you've got the windows for ventilation. The other thing is CNC, I think, is probably going to be a pain point for the people that have studios near it because they're going to want to be near it still, but that's also right next to the wood shop where we're talking about. What if we put a circuit in for lasers and did laser cutting by the windows, and so then the studios now are more valuable in this room for the laser cutters and the folks that use that for their business. Again, not a plan, just an idea.
And spray booth as well. That's
Spray booth. Oh my God. So in the 10,000 square foot space over there's an old bathroom that is perfect for a spray booth. It's no. So in there, it's built out of stone. It's all cement block. The ceiling is stone. It's got ventilation in it already. It's a perfect spray booth. It's just the right size. Just saying.
So lest people get confused, going back on track here, Thomas Online asks, or comments, I agree with the comment about, Thomas comments, I agree with the comment about moving things in that don't impact current studio spaces, then reassessing what makes sense. And I think that brings up a really good point too. We're talking about probably 6 months from now. So that gives us 6 months to plan through this, to take a look at what our needs are, to do a needs assessment, to determine how best to utilize the space. Right now, really what we're focusing on is, one, do we make this move? Two, how do we make this move happen from a financially sound standpoint? And three, are people comfortable with making this move knowing that we're doing it kind of in two phases, with phase one being, let's do what we can so that we can financially afford to do this. Phase two being assessing and knowing we're going to end up building this out. So don't get too focused on long-term, let's move everything in here. Right now, we're just trying to figure out, can we even do this? And if we do this, are we comfortable with making the decisions we need to make short-term in order to support this long-term?
Speaking of studios, and that seems to be very popular, and the cost, which seems to be a worry, would it be helpful to reach out to those interested in studios and get a pre-commitment from them so that you kind of have an idea of what kind of cash flow you would have on a monthly basis?
Yeah, that's right. If you're out there in TV land, send the request to treasure@thebodgery.org. Put in a reservation for your studios.
Yeah, you made the treasurer very happy with that. So yeah, take my thought.
You're talking about moving things over here, big machines. Do we need a forklift for that? And if we can't get in here with a forklift, do we have to put up some kind of hole in the wall and build a new door or what?
So we can, good question. If machinery moves over here that needs a forklift or something, pallet jacks can work well. We don't know all of the doors that are going to go in here yet. That's probably something we can negotiate. We could ask for a roll-up door, in other words, an overhead garage type door between the two spaces. We could ask for a roll-up door in the back to be put in. In other words, you'd have to go out our space and in the parking lot and back in, but whatever. It'd work for the occasional time we need a forklift. And I love the suggestion that we should get a forklift. Always in favor of that. Yes, please. But who knows? That comes down to finances again.
Got a couple more questions online, real quick. One, Sean. If you do not add the space, what are the consequences for the current space? Membership restrictions, project size restrictions, question mark.
Okay, so, I mean, if we don't expand, and I would say the sentiment has generally been let's expand. If we don't, then I think life just gets harder. We have to be stricter about where we store things. We have to expand member storage somewhere. So that means that we're going to have less access probably in the overhead door, like the formerly auto area. We're not going to be able to expand the jewelry / glass / et cetera area to give them more elbow room. We're not going to be able to peel out from the wood shop out because we just won't have room for it. We'll just need more space for more people.
And membership growth may taper off.
Yeah, the less attractive the space is, the less people will be wanting to have a membership. So,
and I think that goes into a comment by Wolfgang online. He comments, I think at some point we need to think about capping membership regardless. Wolfgang, that's one of the things that's going to happen organically, is that the space is not as appealing to everyone. You'll see that membership levels will just ebb and flow accordingly. And usually, at least what's happened in the past, is as people tend to have pain points over the current space, as a group, the Bodgery looks into how to address those. That's how the remodel and removing of things at the Robertson Road location occurred, where we kind of look and see, okay, how are things working? I hope that we get to the point one day where we really have to talk about membership capping, but that would be a pretty tough conversation to have.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that, but I don't like that at all.
yeah, so but as Tony points out, that's a conversation for later. Certainly, I think having this space would alleviate pressure on that in one way, not in services, as I think Doug pointed out. Comments or questions?
Yeah. There is an overhead door just on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So it could come in that way.
Yeah. Except we don't rent that space.
make a building, perhaps. We
Yeah,
Is there a possibility of like doing a kind of Bodgery shop, as in like any members who make something and want to donate something to the shop and like opening it up to the public to buy things? I mean,
like a
everybody loves-
fundraising?
Just, yeah, as part of like
A revenue
stream.
If I can expand upon that, so in Madison, there is a location called Feed Kitchens, which is a community kitchen used for food entrepreneurs. And one of the things they have that's extremely successful is right outside the front door, they have a shelf set up where it's things made here at Feed Kitchens that are available for sale. And the amount of traffic that brings in, just people looking to see, well, what's this all about? And immediately being able to show, okay, well, people are making these kind of things. Things that come into mind are like Dawn's setup, where she has her embroidery. I don't know because I'm new back, but the person who does the water maps, the water signs and such, just having Tom's stuff, just having some of those so that we're showing what the value is of the Bodgery, but also giving an opportunity for those entrepreneurs who are running their business out of the Bodgery to give back a little if they want, or even just to sell.
Yeah, totally. So in the plans, haven't gotten there yet, is going to be a display area for Made at the Bodgery, that people can leave something with a business card. But if we take it to the next step, which is I think where you were going for what if there was an actual shop, one of the advantages of this space is that it's got these nice front doors that have a different address and a different entrance. And so, again, this is just an option. But what if we turn the front section of this into a like people walled off section, and that's the shop that would be open at certain hours, and people could come and buy things, entrepreneurs could sell things.
Handcrafted things, you know, made by local artists and everything.
Yeah.
So one thing, this is totally pie in the sky at this point. One thing the landlord did mention about the far end of the shop is making a kind of Viking longhouse dining area where, Tony, this is kind of in your wheelhouse, bring food trucks in to that space, and people would just have benches to just eat at. And I think if and when that happens, that'd be a great thing for crafters to set up there and be able to sell things.
Yeah, I will say that the landlord has always been, from day one, extremely supportive of what we're doing, and they see it as one of the most attractive businesses that could come in. I mean, Task has been here before we are, but many people don't even know what they do. You know, it's just like, well, they do office, health insurance stuff, like, versus you've got something like what we do, it's very marketable, and it sounds good, and it's got good photos. So I think they would be supportive of us doing all this kind of stuff because it makes their development worth more.
I just wanted to comment online. Thomas said, I'd absolutely donate a percentage of maps sold. I'm hoping that's the Thomas that makes the maps. But either way, yay for us.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Other comments, questions? Wow, that went faster than I thought.
While I've got everyone here and on camera, I know it was mentioned a little while ago, Woodshop has never really had representation on the board. And Woodshop should have representation on the board, but we kind of have to go with how many people are nominated when elections come up. So elections are coming up in June. That means around May or so, we're going to need somebody to step up and nominate themselves to the board. So if you're a Woodshop person, please do that when it comes around.
And or another way of doing that would be, what if every area that has an area captain would be, I hate to say required, to send someone to a board meeting every month. And so right now we have an area captains meeting. The last couple have been sort of postponed. But instead of having an area captains meeting and a board meeting, we could have a board meeting where the area captains come to at least the first hour. We talk about things that they would be interested in, and then we get into the more mundane details that they're less interested in. But if every area of the shop would send representatives, then they would feel like their voices were being heard in the conversation, as well as being on the board. Roger?
Class of Jewelry has 3 captains here right now.
Nice, you guys win.
I was going to say, it's not just the wood shop, it's, the majority of us in the board are in the clean room. Some of us double dip between shop and clean room, but there's not a lot of shop representation either. on the board. So, and I think we've kind of talked about increasing members at large on the board to increase the number of people on the board, or to, you know, like John said, have the area captains come. But yeah, more input is definitely needed.
How many board members do you have?
7.
And is that the limit?
It can grow to 11, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Under current policy.
Yeah, and this last time, there were only 7 people that ran for the board, and some of us only ran because we didn't have enough people to run for the board.
Because we twisted your arm.
You didn't twist my arm, but I said if nobody's going to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah, and I just want
Bad about that.
I want to put a plug out there too. We need women on the board. We need people from all the different areas of the shop. Also,
And somebody to replace Sean, who's getting burnt.
So I'm getting what?
Burnt.
Burned out.
yeah. So our treasurer.
No, but I'm
Are you?
according to the rules, I cannot.
Well,
run
yeah, well, that's
for a
what I
fourth year.
should have said.
So
You're
our
reaching your limit.
treasurer will be stepping back.
My hand is glowing, is pulsing red. It's my time for the carousel.
And so we will need, so Sylvia, who's currently on the board, has offered to take over. We've talked about splitting that role into 2 roles. I should say I've talked about that. Because it's a lot. So one role would be the bookkeeper, the person that just does the books and kind of makes sure, handles the accounting. And the other role would be the membership person. That's the, hey, can you extend my membership? Can I sign up? You haven't paid, all of that kind of stuff. That takes a lot of time.
We may even want to split off another task or duty. I mean, people can do a couple of things at once, but it sounds like we're about to up the number of studios. We might want to have a point person for managing studios as well.
And if I might make a suggestion too, there's a lot of accounting-based smaller businesses in the Madison area. I would say that we're reaching the point of growth, especially if we're talking about adding a large number of studio spaces where we have to account for them, that in order to take one of the big problems off of our hands, we should probably, as part of this, also see what the cost would be to have an accountant take that over. It also provides
To do bookkeeping for us.
to do bookkeeping. It also provides some insulation for the board itself and members.
So we do, once a year, we've been reaching out to, it's not an official audit, but it's Numbers for Nonprofits looks at our books and before taxes, just to make sure that everything is has been done correctly.
And yes, so.
But I'm just talking about us not doing it at all. In other words, just handing it off and having, since we're continuing to grow, and that's just going to be more and more work. You have 3 years of contextual knowledge and experience on it. We're putting someone in who's going to be basically starting from scratch, even if they do have your support in going into it. So since the opportunity is there, let's investigate the cost.
I just remember getting billed at $150 an hour.
There's a lot lower options.
Well, good. Please let us know. That's a great idea.
Do you have a set of bylaws?
Do we have a set of bylaws? We do. We do. And we try and keep those bylaws as minimal as possible. And what we do is we say, see the policies and procedures document, because that document can be changed without all the rigmarole of bylaws.
Does that have the area audit on
Doesn't.
it? I'd like to address her question.
Yeah.
Madison Art Craft that used to be on Monona Drive is no longer there. During the year, I have attended there, and I know people have had studios there to sell craft, and it no longer exists. It is a very good outlet to look at for some financial stability, to have an area where people can bring their crafts that they would like to sell, donating X amount of dollars back to the Bodgery to ensure income on a regular basis.
Well, and one of the suggestions a couple people have made for this space is, what about having a space that could be utilized as an open space for events and things? So yeah, we could do craft markets and other handmade markets and things.
Especially around the holidays.
Time to go?
Okay, we're at 10 almost soon.
Okay, so oh wow, it's 5 minutes still. So any last minute urgent comments or questions? Hearing none, thank you all for tuning in and for coming. I hope this has been useful for your time. The board is certainly going to take pretty good, strong support for expanding into this space. We'll be sending out an actual vote soon. So look for that, and we'll continue the conversation about what to do with the space. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Send you a new email right now.